Hello, and thank you for joining me. Whether you are here now live or you're watching a recording of this webinar later, I really appreciate you tuning in. I initially began formally researching for the first edition of the book, One Trusted Adult, in 2017 because I thought that I was the only educator who didn't get it. I had been a teacher and a school administrator for 15 years at that point, and I truly thought I was the only one who didn't get offered a class on how to build authentic, productive, sustainable relationships with other people's children that promoted academic growth and positive youth development without draining my wallet, compromising my wellness, blurring lines, or burning out. The fact that you are here or you're watching, and the fact that this book has had such wide global reach is an indication to me that I am not alone. At least it feels that way over here. I'm not alone in this issue or this lack of understanding and feeling like I never got trained for this. I did not take a class on this specific topic. So this webinar is focused on that. What's the replacement for that class? How can we build ourselves up, upskill, get the most recent research and information to ensure we're building the right kinds of relationships with other people's children to promote academic growth and positive youth development? It's about the book, but it's also about so much more. So I've broken this webinar into 4 parts. The first being learnings and updated research. I wanted to share some things I've learned from focus groups and formal research we're doing, but also just what we've learned and gathered from being out in schools and partnering with schools to do this work. Then I want to talk about specific strategies for running book studies with this book. Many of these tips that we've gathered come from school leaders who've run successful book studies with One Trusted Adult. Then I'll provide some extra resources, some of them free, some of them programs you can implement in your school. I'll show you all the free ones, videos, posters, and point you to places on our website. We're actually going to put it all together as a bundle at the end of this webinar that you will be emailed within 48 hours. You'll get a recording of this as well as a bundle with all of these resources together in one place to make it super easy on you. And then for anyone that is here live, I am happy to stick around for a Q&A after and just continue the discussion. So this is recorded and something we want to be able to send to you later, so you've got it. But we'll stop the recording and then we'll jump into a Q&A for anyone that wants to stick around. So let's start with those learnings and some of the updated research. I'll start off with something that surprised me really about when the first book came out, the first edition. One of the first things I recognized right away was how widely it was adopted by both veteran educators and new rookie teachers and other school adults. You can see here, these are a couple of my favorite quotes that have come from feedback forums or conversations with educators after reading the book or after participating in our trainings. The veteran educator on the left of the screen talks about this work as stopping to tie our shoes. Like we've been running a marathon for years and years and years with untied shoes and just hoping we're not going to trip ourselves, slam down on the pavement and get behind. That this work is stopping to name things, to make things explicit, to come to agreements and set healthy expectations around what we're doing here and how we truly are helping and serving young people and how can we do it sustainably. I loved that impression from a veteran educator, again, because I thought I might be alone in this problem, in this dilemma, in this issue of burning out when trying to do my best work with young people. But so many veteran educators said, I can't believe we haven't had this conversation until now. And then so many new teachers, new educators, saying things to me like, we're told, love them like your own. But then we're also told, be mean until Halloween. And then we're told, wear your heart on your sleeve. But then we're told, also don't let them forget who's in charge. and the confusion that can exist, especially as a new educator entering schools, wanting to build relationships because that's what we're told, but not having a framework to rely on or specific guardrails other than legal that can help us do right by young people, right by us, and do it in a sustainable way. Recently, at a conference I was at, I asked a question of the group. So there's probably 20 to 30 people in this breakout session I was running. And the question was, when it comes to building trusted relationships with students at school while maintaining appropriate boundaries, what are your school's collective strengths and where are there opportunities for growth? Just lobbed out, just a really simple question. Lobbed out this big, heavy question. But basically, where are we doing really great work here and it's clear and it makes sense? And where are we missing the mark? After we used a pep up card game for a discussion pair discussion, so everyone was chatting amongst one another. And then we came together as a large group to share out what they heard. A man raised his hand and he asked if he could ask the group a larger question. I was like, bigger than that one? And he said, not bigger, but I just want to understand. I want a raise of hands. And I said, okay, go for it. And he had worked in schools all over the world for many years. And he asked the group, has anyone worked at any school where you would say you addressed this? We're always told building relationships with students is the most important thing we can do. But has any school defined what they mean by that or what those relationships look like? And he said, I'm 30 years into this career, and I've never considered that we don't have a common definition for what we mean by strong relationships with kids or what we mean by trusted adult. This is a topic that reaches all experience levels, all departments, all types of educators and school adults, mentors, advisors. This is not about saying there's one way to do it. Actually, it helps us ground ourselves and find footing so everyone can find their unique way to connect with young people and do the work that they're doing within a set of boundaries and rules and expectations that we can all agree to. Another thing that surprised me and really stood out about the work is the reaction to the term one trusted adult. While some come over to me as the author of One Trusted Adult, or if I'm standing at a booth at a conference with our big One Trusted Adult sign, some come over and say, this is what it's all about. We all need to start right here. And others come over and say, one feels limiting. Or they react to this term as something that we're trying to replace parents or replace at-home adults or replace guardians. And I've pulled back to really consider the term. The term trusted adult is used everywhere in my youth serving experience and in my work in education. We heard that term trusted adult again and again as the number one protective factor for young people against the things that we worry about most. And we know from the data that that's where we see the risk dramatically decreased is when students can name at least one. Many is better. Many is better. Many multiplies the number, the risks going down and the possibilities going up. When they can name many, it's better. So I joke, I should have put at least at the top of the book on the cover, at least one trusted adult is where we see the most significant change. That's where we've got to start, but it's the minimum. It absolutely is the minimum. And I believe I really make that clear in the second edition. One trusted adult is the minimum, and the point is to work as a team. We've worked with students to actually, like when we're talking to students, we don't always use that specific term, one trusted adult. We use the term build your bench. And this is something I offer to any and all educators on the call who are running programs, advisory programs, anywhere. Using this term, build your bench with students, helps everyone see. We're trying to build a bench of teachers, coaches, counselors, advisors. We're not looking to supplant relationships with their parents. We're looking to join them on the bench, working towards what's best for that young person. So what has surprised me in learning from this work is a reaction to the term one trusted adult and really being explicit and specific about what we mean by it. I bring up this case study here, an impact story that we have on our website. This is a school in Virginia, and an incredible wellness school director, Kelly Goodrich, who we interviewed, who read the first edition of the book and knew there was work to be done at her school and jumped in 2 feet. You can see her book, it's tagged. She knows the book better than I do at this point, I think. Um, really jumped in to build a program that made sense for her school. And every school is going to be a little bit different, but they created a trusted adult identification day, and they hand out note cards to students, and they actually teach students what they should be looking for as they build their bench for accessible, boundaried, and caring adults, and adults that they deem trustworthy for the right reasons. And they help and coach young people to understand what that means. And they do a note card exercise you can read about. Um, I offer this also because another surprise from the work is some of the schools that came back and told me, we built a One Trusted Adult program and we assigned trusted adults to students. You cannot assign a trusted adult. And this is, I always calmly and politely push back on, oh, we might have missed the mark there. And let's talk through what that means. You can assign an advisor, you can assign a teacher, you can assign a mentor. It does not mean trust will automatically grow. You cannot assign a trusted adult. And that would really hurt and damage a young person's understanding of trust that may impact their future relationships. Trust is something we earn day after day, interaction after interaction. And so I want to make sure, and I think the second edition really gets clear on that. We cannot name ourselves as trusted adults. We can only go 50% of the way in ensuring that we are acting in a trustworthy manner. And it's the child's choice, the young person's choice, whether they choose to trust us day after day. And again, one is the minimum, many is better. Another interesting finding throughout this work has been how often I'm speaking about boundaries and how often the questions at the end of a session go right back to boundaries. And so here I am coming in to talk about trust and connection, and often we end up spending the most time in boundaries. I think this is because this is where the largest gap in our training is as educators and youth serving professionals. Certainly for myself, that is the case. The majority of what I see is we're really good at doing the legal boundary training, which is really important, bringing in the expert, the lawyer, doing the modules on mandated reporting and other legal boundaries that are necessary to keep all parties safe and necessary for safeguarding and child protection. But what those boundary trainings, where they don't go far enough, I would say, and where we've really tried to build on the research and the strategies, is ensuring child protection and adult wellness and adult sustainability. The boundaries that keep kids safe and the boundaries that keep adults safe. So this work is ensuring that all parties, specifically looking at what we can do to protect children and how do we make this work safe and sustainable for the adults who are showing up day after day. Some of the very best educators I've met in an attempt to connect with students are making mistakes. They're stepping outside the scope of their role. They're saying the wrong thing. They're telling a joke that's on the edge. Again, all with good intention, all with the attempt to strengthen connection and build relationship, but it ends up blurring a boundary that needs to exist for the right kind of relationships to be built at school when we're working with other people's children and when there's an expectation of academic growth and development. Through our research since the first edition came out, we've run focus groups with students. The top boundary blur issues, there's many listed in the book, but the two that come up again and again are oversharing and outward sharing. Oversharing and outward sharing. Oversharing, again, when educators are attempting to connect, I think most often it's well-intentioned, an attempt to connect, but are oversharing details of their life that aren't meant to be shared with students they are supervising and in charge of their safety when the focus should be on academics. And the second is outward sharing, where students are feeling like teachers are talking about them, filming them, putting them on social media, sharing with other students about what's going on with them. So these are overshare and outward share are the two biggest boundary blurs. So when we talk about protecting boundaries and types of boundaries, yes, legal. We're also talking about professional boundaries. When we sign a contract to be in a young person's life, there's a professional set of boundaries that must exist. We're talking about social boundaries, the types of environments we're creating, what's allowed and what's not allowed, as well as emotional boundaries, how attached we are becoming and getting to students and the outcomes of their academic experiences, and also keeping our decisions based on fact and not on mood. So much about adults' emotional regulation and appropriate attachment to young people. Much of our work is about drawing lines as well, especially the line between a mentor and a mental health professional. So while all of these boundaries must be discussed, no matter your role in school, depending on your qualifications, specifically as it related to mental health and being therapists, school counselors, school psychologists, the boundaries might be a little different. But for the average educator, we're working on staying on the side of being a mentor and not drifting into being a pretend mental health professional, which can really do more damage than good. Our work is to partner with those mental health professionals and get young people what they need. So, boundaries are necessary. New strategies are necessary for upholding them. And as the world change and the work change, we really have to be attuned to the types of boundaries we're upholding and how we're doing it. I like to think about boundaries as a beautiful thing. Boundaries are a beautiful thing. Like a new haircut, or if you rearrange your furniture in your house, I want to see you and say, I love what you've done with your boundaries. Your boundaries look fantastic. This is the energy and attitude I want moving ahead as we talk about boundaries. This is not a big, heavy, scary topic. This is the most empowering thing we can do as educators and youth serving professionals is get really clear on the boundaries and expectations of our role and then living it. And the boundary work is teamwork. We have to do it collectively. So what's changed since the first edition? That first edition came out in 2019. So not much, right? What could happen in 7 years? Woo, 2019 feels like a lifetime ago. 7 years. Not many people, I'm not sure what the average time is to write a second edition on your book, but it just made so much sense with all the research that we've done. I finished my doctoral studies, pouring energy into doing my own research, as well as keeping up on the literature around this topic. And it just felt like there's so much new information. We've got to go there. We've got to get this material out into the hands of those who need it. What we've seen really change the parent guardian relationships to school. So, whether it's parent rights debates in some places, or it's parent guardian entitlement and access, whether it's online grades and portals they have access to, or just the introduction of technology and apps that allow parents and guardians to feel like they have more access to educators and adults at school than ever before. There's a lot of disruption around this line between parents and guardians and educators and adults at school. Who's responsible for what? Unprecedented levels of burnout among educators and youth serving professionals. I'm sure you know the data there. Young people experiencing fewer intergenerational relationships than ever before. Whether technology or other factors, young people are more often turning to peers or even bots and AI friends rather than aunts, uncles, neighbors, coaches. How does this change and affect the relationships with educators at school? Rapid surge of evolving technology, we're all seeing it and feeling it, rise in mental health issues, and a deemed widespread loneliness epidemic. Major changes on the front for all of us, and specifically big impact for young people. Readers, after the first edition came out, they asked for more practical tools, and that's what this edition really delivers. It's a research-backed framework now for building trust, clear language for setting those boundaries, and strategies educators can actually use in daily interactions. It also, while the first edition felt very personal to me and a lot of my stories from being in schools for 15 years, what this one does is really encapsulates a diverse set of experiences and perspectives and stories because I've had the opportunity for the last 7 years to be working so closely with schools and educators. Again, since the first edition came out, we've had an opportunity to run focus groups, run climate studies, and really measure the impact of this work in schools. We're seeing 40 to 50% of students will say that they can name at least one adult that they deem trustworthy at school. Now, there are many variables that impact this data. How this question is asked, how a trusted adult is defined, whether or not it's sunny outside, whether or not there's mac and cheese at lunch that day, the time of year you ask the question. There's many factors. And so I always caveat this number with schools to say, of course, we're seeking to achieve 100%. But whether we got 50% or 100%, our actions forward would still need to be the same. No matter what, we'd be looking at this issue and saying, here's the steps that we need to take. What we've actually found more interesting than the 40 to 50% number is the 3 or 4 number, which is the number of adults that are actually being named as trusted adults are often the same 3 or 4 adults. So within the 40 or 50% who will say there's someone at school that they trust, they're naming the same 3 or 4 adults. Often we would categorize them as the counselors and the charismatic. Sometimes they are absolutely modeling accessibility, boundaries, and care at an appropriate level and building the right kind of trust with kids. And if that's the case and they're doing it right, they're on a fast track to burnout because there's just a few of them. 3 or 4, if they're not, if they're living outside the boundaries and they're really buying the affirmation and connection with students with who knows what, lollipops and getting out of class early and you can call me by my first name or here's my cell phone number, all the ways that we see educators and youth serving professionals blurring boundaries, then we're in real trouble because those 3 or 4 are setting an unhealthy model for the rest of the campus or community. What we've also found is that when we focus on these 5 areas I've listed on the right, we can increase both of the numbers on the left. When we focus on staff and faculty defining expectations around this work and providing training, which is what you're here to learn about, a book study, whether it's a book study, PD, this discussion in PLCs, online courses. If there is a focus on this work and we can better define expectations, we can increase the number on the left. If we do better at outlining and framing school relationships for parents and guardians, they're better able to understand and set healthy expectations with their children about what adults at school are and what they're not. Students, we also have to educate them on what they're looking for and implement relational assessments, whether that's relationship mapping or in the book, I outline other ways of gathering this data and information. And what we measure is what we elevate, right? Let me reel that back. What we evaluate is what we elevate. Same thing, but it sounds better with evaluate and elevate. So when we measure relationships, we signal that relationships are important. When we measure and ask, does everybody have somebody? We're saying it's important to us that everybody has somebody. And there's different ways to do that. Advisory is so crucial to students feeling a sense of belonging and safety at school. It does not automatically mean that student has a trusted adult, but it increases the chances that they do. But getting the time and the content right in advisory is crucial. And what we see is schools either shoving so much curriculum and stuff in advisory that it suffocates any chance of an organic relationship growing, or we give those advisors nothing and everyone ends up on their Chromebooks or phones or doing nothing and being bored. So getting the time and the content of advisory right is crucial. And again, in the second edition, there's many questions groups can ask themselves to get advisory right and some specific guidance and advice we've discovered through this work. And lastly, student leadership. Engaging and training the influences of your school. Getting to those students who are influencing what's cool and what's not cool. When we work with them, they determine whether or not we at this school hide from the adults or we high five the adults. 2 types of schools I've seen. We either hide from the adults or we high five the adults. And student leaders really dictate the type of culture that you're going to live. And so investing in them early, working with them in an ongoing way can make an enormous difference. All of this work, working with these 5 groups in these ways, is getting us to shared language and shared expectations. And when it's clear what we are supposed to expect from one another, trust improves, right? What undermines trust is not being able to predict or understand what I can expect from someone, or placing stealth expectations on them, having an expectation for them that they are unaware of. All of that undermines trust. So this work moves us towards shared language, shared expectations, raises both of those numbers, and then we can see these outcomes come to fruition in schools. We see that when young people can name at least one adult that they deem trustworthy, they're less likely to bully or be bullied, less likely to participate in risky behaviors, suffer from mental health issues, identify as feeling isolated or lonely, less likely to drop out of school, or we saw absenteeism rates drop with a trusted adult. And they're more likely to report worries or concerns for themselves or others, immediately share if a threat has been made, experience a higher sense of self-worth, and show a greater availability for learning. So if you want a case for why we need to focus on this work, just show this slide to anyone who needs convincing. You're here because you get it. But if there's anyone that needs convincing, show them the data, show them the research, help them understand that this is an upstream investment in young people's potential, young people's safety, and the sustainability of the adults who work with them. What has stayed the same in the second edition is the sections, but I did just want to call out, if you've read the first edition and you're wondering, is there enough new to dive in again, or if you've never read the book and this is your first time learning of it, I just wanted to walk through really briefly the sections. Part one is all about building trust. So we make the case for why this work matters, and then and what's impeding it. What are the obstacles? What are the problems young people are facing in a heightened way today? And their universal youth needs. What do they need? And how can adults set up environments where those needs get met in healthy ways so young people don't seek out unhealthy ways? The second, and then specific strategies that we can use individually and as a group to build trust. The second is all about the boundaries, and I talked a lot about the boundaries, the legal, professional, social, and emotional boundaries, specific strategies for upholding them. And then part three is a complete rewrite from the first edition. We're really talking about programs, partnerships. It gets into advisory, it gets into relational assessments, student leadership, as well as adult leadership, and where school leaders have to have an extra layer of focus and intention around their relationships with staff, because they become the blueprint for how staff relate to students. So again, parts of the book, trust, boundaries, and all around community programming that supports the type of trust and boundaries we need in schools. That's an update on sort of learnings, research, where the book is now. And now I want to jump into some successful book studies, options, ideas, considerations. So the types of book study options I would offer, and honestly, if you are on here live and you've run successful book studies at your school and you want to dump some things and ideas in the chat, please, I welcome the crowdsourcing and all the ideas. And I'm sure people will appreciate if there's anything that you want to share as well. Most popular is an all faculty and staff summer read. So we see this as a pattern in lots of the schools we work with, is that the team, the admin team, or the faculty vote on the book that they're most interested in reading that summer. And after returning from summer break, hopefully they've read the book, they've done their homework, done their assignment, and there's often a half-day book discussion or full day. And in a little bit, when I offer you the extra resources, I'll provide you with specific things you could do if you decide to use this as a summer read and you come back and you've got a half day or a full day. I've got resources to help bring that conversation to life. Another way is all faculty and staff throughout the school year. So we've seen meetings and faculty meetings, PLCs, et cetera, where this is a theme, where we're going chapter by chapter or section by section and sort of month by month and different focuses. So yes, it can be a summer read. We come back and we discuss it, or it can be something that's read throughout the year and that we meet regularly to discuss. New faculty read. Seen this most often at schools where they've already engaged in one trusted adult professional development. Either they've read the book as a group, or they've taken the online courses, or one of our trainers has come in to run a program for them. And they've got shared language, they've got clarity around this work. Now a new faculty group is coming in. We've got to get them the book in their hands and ensure that they're tuned up on the shared language that the rest have already established. I've also seen it run as a mentor-mentee group where veteran faculty are being paired with new faculty. Don't know about you, but I have been the mentee, I have been the mentor. And when there's nothing to bring that relationship together, except maybe getting together for lunch or meeting during the assigned meeting time, it can sometimes feel a little stale, and it's tough to know how deep to dive in or what kind of conversations to be having. And so we found that this book can really give a launch pad for those conversations between mentors and mentees. And obviously the mentors, the veteran faculty can add so much context, and the mentees can come with their questions. School leader admin deep dive. So there are policy, structure, assessment recommendations in the book, and some of them I think it's important for all educators to be reviewing, but some of the decision-making power might be outside of the scope of their role. So some schools have chosen to read the book as a smaller school leader admin team, do a deep dive, and then from there move to a full staff read. So they would take 6 months or take the year to read it as a team themselves, work through the reader's guide, work through the conversation and questions, and then invite the rest of the staff on board. Drop-in discussion series. So we've seen it where there's different books throughout a year that are an option, and people just drop in. So it's like, we're reading this book this month. Anyone wants to drop in for it? This is like a true book club style book study for educators, like you would with your fiction reads at home with your friends, just a drop in and discussion. I've seen it done in an ongoing way, and I've seen it done in a one-off kind of way. I've also seen a successful where they've assigned a chapter. Obviously, we hope everyone's reading the whole book, but where we've assigned a chapter to different small groups or departments, and they are expected to present to their full team throughout the year. And I've seen and recommend using this book as a part of safeguard training, as well as part of advisor training. I'll talk more about it in a minute and sort of how we frame the why of it, but we've definitely seen it successfully used with that framework in mind, going in safeguarding from the boundary side of things, and also going in training advisors on how best to connect with their advisees. So considerations, the who, the why, the how, and the when. This is where I invite you to get really clear on the who, the why, the how, and the when in order to support a successful book study. We've all been parts of not successful ones. We want to set you up to ensure that you get it right off the bat to really support the mission and the message. So who is it for? One of the things I've noticed is that, well, and we see in the research, is that students are more inclined to be naming non-evaluative adults as their trusted adults at school. We've seen an increase in this. And what I mean by that is they're not naming teachers whose class they're currently in, coaches whose team they're currently on, but they're often naming administrative assistants, nurses, crossing guards, bus drivers, those who work in the cafeteria, custodial staff. They're naming other adults from school who aren't currently in a position to be evaluating them. There's lots more I want to research and study here to understand this. But what I've also noticed is when I'm invited to come in and run PD, or when a school is offering a book study, often those adults are not invited to the professional development or not given the book and invited to be part of the book study. We know those adults are having a big impact on students' lives, especially if students are naming them. So one school actually invited, it was a bookstore manager, it was someone who worked in the cafeteria, and someone from the health office who wouldn't normally be invited to the professional development or part of the book study, but they had been listed on the assessment done by students as trusted adults. And so they went to them and they gave them the book and said, "Thank you so much for showing up for young people. And we invite you to come to this discussion with us because of the ways that you're making such an impact." And now, lots of people say PD, book study, roll their eyes. But when you're invited like that, these people were so honored and grateful to be invited to this discussion and this training. So, when you are thinking about who this is for, I really invite you to be thinking big picture about who interacts with young people, who do the young people name, and let's get everyone in the room who could benefit from this conversation about trust and boundaries. The why, making sure you're aware of the end goal or you've defined the end goal from the beginning. Are we doing this book study to enhance safeguarding, improve advisory programming, reduce absenteeism, support mental health? Is this about teacher sustainability and support? Is this about enhanced climate and culture? I vote for all of the above. But sometimes there's one issue we're really trying to solve for. There's one problem that keeps coming up again and again. The work of One Trusted Adults can support all of these things, but you getting clear on your why as a group will help the full team understand why this book, why now, and definitely increase buy-in. The how, depending on the options we talked about, if you're doing a school-wide read and breaking into discussion groups, or you're discussing throughout the whole year, this will factor into the how. But a couple of recommendations: always 2 leaders per group helps so much when there's 2 facilitators can rely on one another to keep the conversation going. We really recommend mixed groups, veteran, new, different departments, different ways in which they're interacting with young people. There's so much to learn from one another. And the magic number is 10 or less to ensure there's enough stories and enough people talking, but not so many people that people can't feel like they can't talk. 10 or less is the magic number to get these conversations flowing and beneficial for all. And lastly, the when. This is the hard part. I wish I could wave a magic wand and give you all more time. Time is always the issue. But what I recommend when deciding when is to just get really clear on the expectations, a plan. Let them know what to expect. This is not a one-off flash in the pan. This is our ongoing schedule for discussion. We want you to be prepared. We're really investing in this. And here's the plan and the calendar and how we're rolling it out. Probably the most important part of this webinar is for me to say that we have unbelievable OTA coaches who know this book through and through. 2 of them are here, Beth Corkum and Brenda All-Claben, from New Hampshire and from New York, but we'll meet with anyone from anywhere virtually. The signups for this webinar are global, all over the world, and we want to work with you on the who, the why, the how, and the when. So you can schedule free time with Beth or Brenda and to go through who is this book study for? Why? Help me get to my why on this so I can be clear. How should I do it? And when? Help me look at my calendar and when am I going to? They would love nothing more than to work with you on that and to share about other resources and pitfalls and obstacles they've fallen into. They've done it. They both work in schools, they've run book studies and many other OTA programs. They are a wealth of knowledge, huge resource, free. Please reach out to us and we'll get you connected with them to walk it through. Why not? Why wouldn't you use their help and just have a partner in designing this? So next, I want to inform you of some extra resources we have. The first is this free downloadable on the One Trusted Adult website. This reader's guide was created exactly the way I love to host book studies, which is personal reflection first and then discuss with the large group. So give me this packet as I read chapter by chapter. I want to reflect personally, get clear on my thinking, and then I want to join a large group or a small group. I want to jump into discussion. So every chapter, and Beth and Brenda have helped develop this, every chapter includes personal reflection and large group discussion prompts. So that, again, is a free downloadable from our website, which is the #1 resource for the book study. Oh my goodness. Here is a zoomed in version, but again, you can download this for free to see personal reflections and large group discussion. The next resource I am so excited to share with you. These two videos live free on YouTube. And the first one we created on the left was for students. And it outlines the ABCs, accessible, boundaried, and caring. It outlines exactly what young people should be looking for as they identify the trusted adults in their life. Um, it has been very widely used and viewed thousands and thousands of times. We've heard of people using it to kick off their advisories. They've used it at all school meeting. They've shared it with parents. That is a free resource for you to use, student focus, student facing. And then what we heard from people was they wanted an adult version of that. How do we do the same quick messaging for adults as a reminder or an introduction? And so we've just completed, it's called Whose Bench Are You On? The educator version of that. So this one is to be shared with all adults at school about the types of relationship they should be seeking to build with young people. It's the whole book and all the research distilled down into a 5-minute video, which is no easy task. But we had an amazing young woman designer who helped us get there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that video. And please, when you get the packet from us, all these links will be live in that packet so you can access them very easily. The next resource I wanted to make sure you're aware of is something called the Boundaries Quiz. So if you're in the book study and you get to that boundary section, a great tool is this free quiz that identifies whether your boundaries are too loose, too rigid, or just right. And again, it's all about this comes from the data. The quiz is developed through the focus group study groups that we've learned about the different blurs, bulldozed boundaries, where we're floating towards the line, and how we're getting it just right. So it's a little bit of a diagnostic, but really what it is to prompt important conversation around boundaries and the strategies we have for upholding them. And a set of posters, many more than even this. And I think the book bundle will include all of them. But on our website, as free resources, we have posters that we encourage people to hang up around their spaces. So they are youth-facing posters. I should pull back and I shouldn't say that. Right. So the first one being a prompt for having a conversation about mandated reporting and the types of things I will have to report as a trusted adult in your life. The middle one, we have used it with young people, and it's certainly part of our advisory curriculum and when we're talking to student leaders. But I've seen it more often hanging in staff rooms and discussion for adults. The third is our most popular downloaded poster that says, while I am not your parent, I'm a promoter of your potential. While I'm not your therapist, I'm a defender of your dreams. While I'm not your friend, I am an advocate for your needs. So that is our most downloaded, again, giving us language to set healthier, clearer expectations for the young people we work with. Two last things before I wrap up are case studies and impact stories. I shared with you already the Kelly Goodrich story. We are working really hard to share with everyone the good work that is happening out there with our resources and materials. So this is a brand new one. It's not up yet, but it'll come out in a newsletter soon. This is a group in New Hampshire. They ran the Make It Your Mission course, which is a virtual group PD program, builds on the book. So whether before the book study or after the book study, this is an extension. And they ran it with a private school, a public school, a residential school, and we gathered data and feedback from all of those educators and youth serving professionals. Incredibly successful. Shout out to this team. Carrie, I know well. Phenomenal job in, again, bringing this work, this message to life. So want you to be aware of the resources beyond the book, again, so it's not a flash in the pan, but you know that there's continued ways to keep this mission and message alive in your communities. The other case study or impact story I wanted to draw your attention to was Nancy, who's a school counselor, wellness director. I'm looking at college counselor, college counselor at a school in Korea. And she has been running the Be Bold student leadership program. So as I mentioned, getting to the student leaders, the influence in your school, so important to this mission of ensuring everyone's got a trusted adult. And this one is live and up right now. Incredible story to read about how she is facilitating and implementing this program in her school. It's easy to use, made it for educators, and worked really hard to make sure it's affordable and that you can use it with as many participants as you want for your full subscription, full year, 12 months you have the course. So check that out. You can always ask for a demo. I will wrap that up here. I want you to know it's so much more than a book, but it starts with the book. The most updated research, everything you need is in that book, and so much more. My mission is to ensure that every young person can name at least one adult that they deem trustworthy in the spaces where they spend the majority of their time, and they spend a lot of time in your schools. And I know you want to get this right too. Shared language, shared language. We're all working towards common expectations and shared language. Within 48 hours, you'll get this recording and you'll get a book bundle PDF that will put all of these resources and ideas and a checklist into one packet for you. And please reach out. Thank you so much for showing up, for investing